Hi everybody, this is Jacob Vile for a build update today. I'm wanting to kind of see where the subwoofer stands on the coil reading, so I'm going to read what the coils are on the subwoofer, and I also want to kind of see, hey, this is where my port's been fine-tuned to, on a really specific range of what is it tuned to, and as well as how I calculate that, and see where I truly am tuned to with the port area on this. So I've done a couple other videos before on making the port adjustments, roundovers, tuning, amplifier settings, but not really digging into the real world things that I'm dealing with and explaining them in a way that people can understand. So for this, I'll go ahead and get started. So I'm expecting somebody that doesn't know what cardio is when I explain this stuff. All right, so I have a multimeter here, and there's an ohm level on the subwoofer that I'm reading. So when I have my subwoofer wired to my amplifier, I have a 12-inch subwoofer wired to my big 6K amp. So what I'm doing is I'm going to be measuring my ohm configuration, my wiring configuration going to my amplifier. So this is a monoblock amplifier, but as I mentioned in previous videos, you have two positives and two negatives, but they're still linked. So these two positives are linked, these two negatives are linked. So if you put a positive wire only here, it's going to be the same as putting one only here. So that's not going to matter when wiring a subwoofer. So what I want to do is measure today. I want to know exactly what I'm tuned to, or not tuned to, but I'll do that next. But I want to know exactly what my subwoofer is reading. So what I'm going to do is set this phone down real quick as I'm recording. I'm going to put my wire in here. I have a little hole for how I read. So the reason I do that is so I can actually see how my subwoofer is doing after the break-in periods, because my subwoofer's been breaking in for a while and it takes a while. So all right, I got my speaker wire hooked in to my terminal. So you have a positive and a negative. The red is positive, the black is negative with my multimeter. So you can get a multimeter for like $10, $12, $15 at a lot of local stores. And what I do to read this is, let me turn this off to reset it. Okay. So what I do to read this is I'll literally go in, make sure this is good, wired in. So multimeter is cheap, so it doesn't read exactly perfect, but what happens here is you'll be pretty close to it. So right here I'm at 0.8. So I'm wired down to half ohm, but the coils read around 1.1, 1.28, so it does bounce anywhere from 0.6 to 0.9 depending on the temperature, how hot the coil is, as well as how the voltage is reading through the ohms of the wire. But right now I'm at 0.8, 0.9. And what I'll show you real quick is I'll take one of these out and put them back in, and you'll see it kind of slightly change too. So when you turn it off and back on, see, there you go. So just by literally resetting it goes back to that half. So that kind of shows you that you have some playroom. So you got to check multiple times when reading subwoofer wiring. So that's on that. So I'm wired to half ohm, 0.5 on my subwoofer. So that's good. So that means my subwoofer coils are good. It's good to check your subwoofer coils sometimes to kind of know where they are, because you never know if you notice, oh crap, my subwoofer system's not as loud as it was. You never know, one of your coils could be blown. So that's a good thing to check. So going back on this, you only have to read one of the two if you have two wires. So I literally have one subwoofer going to one coil, one going to the next coil, and then that's ran for positive and negative both. So that's a dual one subwoofer, so it's dual one. So 1 ohm, 1 ohm. Put the two positives together, it goes to half ohm. So that's how that worked there. You have to use subwoofer, Google subwoofer wiring diagrams to learn this. That's the best way to learn. That's how I learned. All right, so now I'm gonna go to measuring my port. So this is one that I don't really talk too much on because there's so much variation, but what you want to do, what I'm doing is I'm going to kind of see exactly what my width is of my port here. So looking at it straight, it looks like it's right at 8. Yep, right at 8 inches wide. And then the height is going to be 14 high. Okay? So you got 8 and 14. So what you do with that for port area is going to be the measurement tool to know where your port width and length multiplied together is. So area is length times width. So my length was 8, my width was 14, vice versa. So I'm right at 112 square inches of port. So what does that mean? That means that my port area is 112 because it's 14 times 8. So my width is 8 inches and my height is 14. So that's 112. So that means that my subwoofer cone area is right at where my port area is. And I'm loudest at right at almost 100% port area, which is crazy. to see that. So that means it's a really extremely peaky box. So how I calculate port or subwoofer cone control, or not cone control, subwoofer cone area is if my subwoofer is a 12 inch, so I'm going to multiply my radius of my subwoofer diameter, which is 6, times itself, because it's radius squared, and then I'm going to multiply that by pi, which pi is 3.14, so 113. So 113 square inches is my port area, my cone area of my subwoofer. And that's the outside, assuming that's a 12-inch cone. Ideally, the cone is probably a little less than that, because depending on the roll of the size, so it could be, let's say, 11.5 instead of 12. So it could be slightly less than that. But going from that, it shows that I'm actually losing there. The amount of port area I have is so large that my subwoofer cone area is exactly at 100% of my port area. But that's not how you normally want to tune your enclosure. You want to have your enclosure tuned normally between 14 and 16 square inches per cube. So, for example, I have a 6 cube box, so 6 cubes times 16. So my port area should be 96 ideally. If I was doing 16 square inches of port per cube of box size. If that doesn't make sense, I'll explain a little simpler. So you have cubes of enclosure space in your enclosure. You measure that through mathematical terms. I'm not going to explain all that. I usually use just 12volt.com on Google for a subwoofer box calculator, and from there calculate the box specs that way. So you have your cubes, so I know I'm right at 6 cubes for the box. It's like 5.8, 5.9, but let's just say 6 cubes. So the box is 6 cubes, and then what I need to know is what's the recommended expected port area you need per square foot for your port, based on your cubes. So 6 cubes and an average port is 14 to 16 square inches for a ported enclosure. I normally like to do more around 18 to 20 because I know it's a little louder, but it doesn't play as musical. But this is more for 4th orders, so let's just say we'll stick with the 16 for the ported enclosures. So you have 16 square inches of port. Square inches is literally the area, so the length times the width and width of your port. So you'll multiply those two, so that's 16. Let's just say, so you want to do, so I have 6 cubes in my box, and I'll multiply it by 16 because I want to have 16 square inches of port per cube, and I have 6 cubes, so that gives me 96 square inches. So how do I know how short my length needs to be? It would be 96 divided by my height. The reason I do my height is because that's the constraint. I'm going to be shrinking the width, not my height, so my port width should be 6.8, so right at 7. So if I was to reduce this port to right here, so right at about another inch from there, that will be right at where that port area of 16 square inches per port, per cube of box enclosure space is. And if that doesn't make sense to you, I'll just ask and I'll answer in the comments, or somebody else will. If I'm wrong, let me know, because I'm learning too. But yeah, that's kind of the way I calculated my port specs. But I go with 20 square inches per cube. So what I mean by that is, so I know I have 6 cubes times 20. So it'll be right at 120 square inches, but I'm at right under that because remember I did 8 times 14, so 112. So I'm right at where I want to be with the 20 square inches of port, 20 square inches per cubic foot, because this is just dead on with the roundover. But if you slightly go out of the roundover, that's part of your width as well, accommodating for it, because it's not a flat flange here like a 2x4 or whatever. It has a roundover, so your port width could slightly be adjusted there. And that depends on the size of your PVC roundover as well. Anyway, enough mathematical talk for today. Thanks for watching. I hope I answered some questions, and looking forward to some more comments and videos to come. And subwoofer break-ins coming along. I'll see y'all next time. Jacob Ball.